In this lesson, we're going to look at factors. Factors are a hugely important thing in understanding a lot of number theory, to understanding a lot of contest problems, and really just being good at any kind of math that relies heavily on integers, which is most of the math that you do. So when we talk about a factor, right, a factor is always a quantity Okay, and the reason I say quantity is sometimes when we use the word factor, we talk about numbers that are, or we could talk about variables being in there, and there's a lot of things that we can talk about. Now, in general, what we're going to do is talk about integer factors. But in general, when we talk about a factor, it's a quantity, some value. So it's a quantity that divides evenly into another quantity. Now, this is very similar to the word divisor. A divisor is very similar to this. They're pretty much interchangeable. If a number is if an integer is a divisor of another integer, then it's also a factor of that integer. Okay, factor is often referred to it. You can use as a verb, right? This would be a noun usage of the word factor. To factor something would be to find two divisors that multiply together to get that number. So what we're going to look at is we want to find out what are factors of numbers. So for instance, a question you might run into would be, what are the factors right? What are the factors of 12? And when we say this, I mean, what are the integer factors of 12? In general, that's what we're going to be talking about, our integer factors. So to do this, we just think about what are all the numbers that multiply together to get you 12. So the best way to do this is to list them out by thinking about products and starting with the smallest number possible, which is 1. And so if we start with 1, 1 times 12 would equal 12. So that gives us two factors, right? If we're going to list the factors out over here, we now know that 1 and 12 are factors. Then the next smallest number would be 2. Does 2 go into 12? Well, yeah, it's an even number. And 2 goes into 12 6 times. So 2 and 6 are are factors of 12. Then we can look at 3 and 4. And we can look at 3 times 4, and that equals 12. Well, once you get to a point where these two numbers are right next to each other, or there is not another number to look at, then you're done. I don't need to look at the rest of them. I don't need to consider 4 because I've already got 4. And anything above 4 would be included in this list here. So it turns out that 12 has 6 factors. So when you talk about a number, there's a lot of things that we worry about with factors. Number one is how many factors does it have? This is 6. We might be concerned about the sum of the factors. Well, that would be adding all these up. So 1 plus 12 is 13, plus 2 is 15, plus 6 is 21, plus 7 is 28. So the sum of the factors, the sum in this case would be 28. Okay, we might be concerned about what is the sum of the factors that are not 12. Okay, we would call those the proper factors of 12. The proper factors always means all the factors that are not the number itself. So in this case, it would be adding up 1 and 2 and 6 and 3 and 4. And so that's going to give you 3 plus 6 is 9, 12, 16. And so the sum of the proper factors would be 16, which you note is bigger than 12. Okay, the reason I note that is because it brings up a way to classify numbers. And the way that we classify numbers is using one of 3 terms, either a deficient, perfect, the number we all want to be, or abundant. So we can use these 3 terms based upon the factors to find out, to describe numbers. A deficient would be some less than the number itself. Okay, so in this case, if the sum of the factors, meaning the proper factors, obviously deficient wouldn't be included if we included the number itself. If the sum is less than 12, then it would be considered a deficient number. A perfect number is when that sum of the proper factors actually equals the number, right? Would actually equal the number that we're talking about. So if the sum of its proper factors equals a number, it's called a perfect number. Abundant, which is what 12 is when the sum of the proper factors is greater than 16, or greater than the number, not 16. So that's three different ways to characterize numbers, either as deficient, perfect, or abundant. So we could ask you a question such as, what kind of number is 6? Well, if your possibilities here would be deficient, perfect, or abundant. We look at these numbers, and we have 1 times 6, or factors of 6, and then 2 times 3. So the factors of 6 are 1, 2, 3, and 6. When we're talking about is it abundant, perfect, or deficient, we don't worry about the number itself. So we add these up, and we find out that 6 is a perfect number. Okay, we found out that 12 was deficient. We found out that, or abundant. We found out that 6 is perfect. One thing you'll know for sure is all prime numbers are always, think about it for a second, prime number factors are always 1 in the number itself, so the sum of the proper factors of prime numbers is always 1, so prime numbers are always deficient. Okay, so prime numbers have you can always tell if they're perfect, deficient, or abundant just because they're prime numbers. So you will have some problems to talk about listing out factors and numbers. It's very important to be able to list all the factors of a specific number. And then it's also important to be able to know, is that number going to be deficient, is it perfect, or is it abundant?